Let's start with the doctor strike and the tough-talking health secretary. I've got a quote here in all the papers this morning, talking about the doctors' refusal to cancel their strikes. He's saying, "I am astounded that the BMA's leadership has rejected this. It means their NHS colleagues will this week be cancelling Christmas plans to cover shifts, and patients will have their operations cancelled. This is the killer line. I cannot understand the willful casualness with which the BMA has chosen to inflict this pain." And he said this as well.
While I'm frustrated with the BMA, and I think they're playing games now with patients' lives and the lives of other doctors who'll be forced to cover strikes, that doesn't alter the fact that what we've put forward is a good deal for doctors.
A right cross, a left cross and a right uppercut.
But look, I mean, for the Health Secretary now, we all know that this is a very difficult time for the health service. Christmas, New Year, people use that service more than any
we've got a massive flu outbreak.
And
then critical numbers in lots of
So you could see his
hospitals.
frustration. He didn't swear, but he was thinking. You could see that he was like, "What the hell are you guys doing? This is really not the right time to do this." And clearly, that's probably why they're doing it, because they're inflicting, I think, maximum pressure on the government. So it's quite a balanced situation. I think the BMA are flexing their muscles. And he has, as the government, and with presumably the backing of his colleagues in Cabinet, he's got to come up with an offer that is going to diffuse the situation. Because if this carries on, then I think it's a big problem, not just for the government, but for people who are very ill.
I mean, Nels, where's your heart lie on this one?
Well, so if you go back to how we find ourselves in this sort of trouble, where we find ourselves right now, going back to 2008, the financial crash, and we have to look at who paid the cost of that. And the people who really bore the burden of that in terms of their actual pay, in terms of their prestige of their job, in terms of how they're valued not valued in society, but how they're valued in terms of how we pay them, and in particular, have been doctors, have been nurses, have been prison wardens, have been bin collectors, have been the people who really provide the real absolute services to our society.
OK, so just pause on that one. So what people would say is bin collectors' pay has not gone up at the rate that resident doctors
and it
have.
should.
So why is this not now fair, this offer?
Well, doctors' pay in particular, so over the last 14, 15, 16 years or so, which is a decade and a half, has been cut in real time.
Yeah, and they want to go back to 2008, but there's still average 88,000.
For a doctor, for a medical doctor, that's a bargain and a half.
Well,
that's a bargain and a half.
I would agree with you, actually.
No, of course, given the amount of work that's put into, given what we're trusting them with, given the cost that is, given the fact, look, they are subsidising our cost of living by agreeing to be part of the NHS.
I agree with that, but where's the money going to come from, Nels?
Exactly.
Because the average salary is £40,000. They're double the average. I agree with you. 6 years of training. You know, the responsibility of lives in their hands, I'd pay them any amount of money. But the problem is that there's a limited pot.
So I'll say this. So your question was, where's the money going to come from? And my answer would be, where did the money go to? And I'll say the money should come from where it went to.
So where did it go?
Where we bailed out.
Where we bailed out.
Marxist,
no, it's not Marxist anything. No, I'm not Marxist anything. I was working for HBOS when HBOS collapsed. So I was at Insight Investment at the time. I would have placed that once again. Also, I think that we should be returning back to financial services and reminding them, not out of grudge or anything else, but out of necessity, that in this particular time also you continue to exist as a viable entity due to the generosity of the British people.
So,
and we need you.
Are you going to put up taxes?
I would have imposed some sort of actual tax on the city to make sure that we can actually fund a tax on. Please.
I'll ask a fundamental question here. How realistic is it for any profession to expect to be paid in real terms what they were paid in 2008? Because you know, out and about on my travels, and I do a newspaper column as well, I've been asking that question to quite a few people in very different professions, and while I'm out doing the shopping, I've been doing my own little sort of straw poll. I can't find anybody, and that includes people in the studio, includes you and it includes me, who is earning in real terms what we earned in 2008, because that's called the economy, and the economy goes up and down. And as Kate says, if there isn't the money in the pot, there isn't the money in the pot.
So the thing that I find really cynical about this is the timing. Because, you know, obviously they're trying to inflict maximum...
You mean Christmas and flu?
Yeah. I mean, you've got a flu not quite an epidemic, but it's very high numbers. You're going into Christmas where you know there's more demand for your service. So you think, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on strike. I think it's very cynical.
I mean, the BMA says they're not doing it cynically because this is the pressure.
Of course they're going to
say that. They say the date's always been there, but they say they're doing it because they have to stand firm.
Yeah, but they're you know, let's not kid ourselves. They're trying to inflict as much embarrassment and as much, you know, damage to the government as possible. You know, you don't announce a strike on the 10th of December, knowing that you're going into the Christmas season. It's not a coincidence.
Aren't they? Look, let's again another fundamental question. Let's get back to the basics here. Aren't the what we used to call the junior doctors breaking their Hippocratic oath?
I would say, well, the oath has to go both ways. That, yes, of course...
It doesn't have to go both ways.
No, we as a society... we as a society have to... They can't actually be... Their standards of living, their cost of living also isn't being negated by the fact that, hey, they're part of the NHS and they're providing a massive service to us at a hugely discounted rate. Healthcare in Britain is significantly cheaper than healthcare, say, in America or so. No one's going bankrupt. No one's going bankrupt as a result of actually having... as a result of being happy healthcare in this country.
Your question
so to answer...
more directly, I know...
Yeah, but please...
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Because, no, of course they're not.
Of course they are.
Of course, because
because they have a duty to the patient. And they're going into Christmas. You say, oh, well, it's a coincidence that they've announced the strike on the 10th or whatever it was of December. They know that Christmas and New Year are high-impact, high-pressure times where people feel very vulnerable, where people get ill for lots of reasons. It's the time of the year. And they're saying, actually, we're going to go on strike.
And politically
I think it's
speaking,
completely irresponsible.
From your experience in government, do you detect... from the tough talk, as we quoted him earlier, from West Streeting, that actually the government really is digging its heels in and they're not going to give any more?
I think the way he reacted and the words he used, he showed extreme frustration at what they're doing. He even said, which I was quite surprised at, he said they're playing games with people's lives.
That is hard
language. That's very tough language from a Labour health secretary, and they founded the NHS.
It's bargain.
And so I think they're very frustrated. I think he's trying to say...
digging in.
Yeah, I think he's trying to say, this is what you're going to get, and the ball's in your court.
Both sides are playing a tough bargain here, and the BMA, the doctors, are having to actually bargain at a time of maximum pressure, which is understandable. That's how you go into a bargain when things are on your terms are to your advantage. I don't think they're doing it. I certainly don't agree.
The difference is, Nels, that people feel is that you know, the numbers are worse than we feared. It's always bad, you're right, because flu, pressure on Christmas, you know, all those things. It's exceptionally
bad this year.
But it is particularly bad this year. Sure. And I suppose the difference is, as you say, you're going in and you're bargaining at the best point where you've got maximum leverage. But when that's people's lives, that's where I think maybe they're starting to lose the heart of people.
I think they will.
I'm not convinced they are losing the hearts of people. I think that the average person...
we're running a poll on it.
We'll see about that. But we'll see about that. But don't get me wrong, it's always easy to win a poll where it's like, hey, should this person get paid more than you say, well, I'm not getting paid more.
I think Kate makes a good point. I think they are alienating public support the longer this carries on.
Kemi would know lots about public support, wouldn't she? But there we go.
I said Kate.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Kemi.
We're very easily confused now, Kemi Badenoch myself.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I didn't hear you.
But to take a quote from a different context and apply it to this one, when the facts change, I change my mind. The facts have changed in terms of public health this month.
Agreed.
Because the flu epidemic is much worse than anybody predicted. In fact, it's twice as bad. There are twice as many people in hospital now as was expected, and it's turned out to be an extremely virulent strain.
That's right.
Is that not something which the BMA should take into account and think, well, OK, we'll continue the dispute, but we'll postpone it for the next few weeks while we deal with this flu crisis?
I wouldn't be surprised if something gives over the next few days.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if something does give over the next few days, but given the actual circumstance and situation. But at the same time, I don't think that the BMA should inherently be vilified for actually doing what's in the interest of their members. Doctors have actually borne the brunt of the economic troubles that we found ourselves in over the last 15, 16 years. And it's time that the doctors, the bin men, the teachers, etc., came and got their check. And I feel it's only right that they do so. They're going to have to stand their ground in order to achieve that.
So two things about that. One, that this has happened across the economy, as Richard said. So every person nearly has had the same sort of pressure on their wages. And the second thing I would say is that they're doctors. You know, they're people who have a unique trust, a unique position, looking after people, life and death questions. And for them to be bargaining, as you said, that was the word you used, I think is irresponsible. I don't think it's right.
All right.
We've also debated on this programme whether they should be actually, by law, allowed to strike. And I think that's a broader debate.
We will be dealing with that in our discussion about it in about an hour and a half's time. Look, we're going to be talking shortly about homelessness and the Labour initiative to try and deal with it in a second. It's an important story. But I do want to take just a sharp right-hand turn here, because I don't want to lose this in the mix. Sure. I just find this extraordinary. It's another case of basically council apparatchiks. Doing over people for littering, when by any common sense you wouldn't say it was littering. This is an old age pensioner. He's 86 years old. What's he called? Mr. Marsh, Roy Marsh. He was sitting at a public area, looking at the water of a pond/lake, and a leaf blew into his mouth. And he spat it out, stood up to go, and 2 council wardens rushed across and said, "That's littering." And they fined him 250 quid. Now, he appealed. Up to a point did he win. He's had to pay £150 for public littering, for spitting out a leaf. Yeah. What is going on?
I mean, it's crazy. So we had this a few months ago, I think, where someone was pouring, I think, a cup of coffee down a drain, and they were.
She poured a third of a cup of coffee down a drain.
So I don't know what's going on. I suspect the councils are strapped of cash and they're looking to raise money in this way, because that's the only way, rational way you can explain something like that.
Well, I think it's Skegness Council. They said that they only pursue...
Sorry, it's East Lindsey District.
It's in Lincolnshire.
East Lindsey, sorry. Say that they only pursue people who do serious littering offences. And I have to say, spitting is something I find really horrible. You know, when we're walking along the road and people
You mean gobbing on the
spit.
pavement?
Yes, I do. I think that's, I don't know. It's probably not littering, is it? No. But I just think, don't do that.
No, but it is an offence. It is an offence to spit in public. But if a leaf or a fly...
It is 18. Oh, my goodness.
It's the leaf bit. It wasn't the fact that it was the fact that, you're going to get this thing out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And what else are you meant to do?
Swallow it.
It could be good for you. I mean, no, it's green after all. But what really surprises me is that I haven't bumped into these council wardens before. I've not seen this sort of concept. So I'm really reading
You're
about
obviously
them.
always very well behaved.
No, I just don't. Perhaps I am, but I just haven't seen them. I haven't. Maybe because it might be a London thing, but I do think it says something about Britain in general. Yeah. So I'll give an example. I'll give a comparison example. Yeah. Over the summer, I got to spend some time in New Orleans, and I got a parking ticket. When I got a parking ticket, I was outside. I'd overparked by about an hour or two. And I got a parking ticket. I was oh, God almighty, my first parking ticket in America. And I opened it up, and I was expecting to get the London-style whammy-bammy massive fine. And it was $30. And it became $60 if I didn't pay it within 30 days. It became $90 if I didn't pay it within 90 days.
$30 is about 20 quid.
20 quid. But what it just said to me immediately was that, actually, this seems fairly reasonable. It doesn't seem like something that's excessively priced or so. And I thought to myself, OK, no wonder the people, when you go out in New Orleans, you go around America, they actually seem happier than us. That the state isn't as hard-nosed in extracting money from you.
Really good point.
The state isn't as hard-nosed in extracting money from you. So if you get a parking ticket in London, particularly if you're a working person, it could destroy your day. It's £80. That could be, some people, that might be their entire wages or so. $160 if you don't pay, if you can't afford to pay it in 2 weeks. $240 a court case if I'm supposed to be on that.
OAP.
And I do think that this is the same thing that's happening over here with these council wardens too. It's damaging the quality of life and the happiness of the nation. And it's part of those things that are triggering, part of those small elements that are triggering the emigration.
That little kind of range that people feel, I think.
So just going back to this case, there's no way that £150 for essentially spitting a leaf out of your mouth is
outrageous.
just.
And he's 86.
It's
he hasn't
completely,
got
it's completely disproportionate.
Can I just say, and I'm going to your point about parking things, you're quite right. I mean, for example, if you park outside an important exit area, just wantonly, half up on the pavement, and you're blocking access to an important entry point, well, then I think you should have a big fine, because it's extremely antisocial. But, as you say, if you've just overstayed in a legitimate parking spot for 10 minutes, 180 quid, 160 quid? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it creates that hard-nosedness to Britain. I really something that we have to think of too, particularly when we're speaking of emigration and people leaving Britain. It's one of those things I have to think of in terms of how the state treats us as people and the contract between the people and the state. You're right, as you said, if it's something that is reasonable, OK, a person's made an honest mistake, that person shouldn't be in a business meeting or maybe seeing the doctor or anything else and be panicking that they're parked outside and they're going to end up with an £80 fine, or which becomes 160. There has to be a way, there has to be a middle ground and more fair Garraway to make Britain a more friendly and a nicer place for us to live with.
I think, because you start to feel burdened, don't you, and broken down. Something that I think we all agree is horrible is homelessness.
Sure.
Oh,
This time of year, when you pass people, it's cold, it's wet. I don't know, it's just so depressing that we have that world. But Andy Burnham, Manchester's Labour mayor, says it's all the government's fault, or at least Labour is making the problem worse. He says freezing housing benefits. He has a personal budget as a mayor, and he spends that budget on putting some 600 kind of placements for those that are homeless to pay for them to be in a hotel. What do you make of that?
I was very interested in this because obviously there's been this talk about Andy Burnham maybe succeeding Keir Starmer, setting himself up as a kind of alternative. And with my political hat on, I think, why is he coming out now publicly saying this? Because all of these things, generally, can be dealt with privately. He could, he could pick up the phone to the minister or the prime minister even and say, look, your homelessness policy isn't quite the right thing, or you're doing this and that. If you're a team player, you would probably do it behind the scenes.
And in fact, today's the day, and he's saying that just as the government today launches its national plan, putting in £3.5 billion of investment to tackle homelessness, other investment as well on a local level. They're not going to be chuffed to find
they'll be furious.
This, are they,
the people in charge of the Downing Street grid, the comms messaging, all of that, will be very upset that their top headline, 3.5 billion positive, is now going to be drowned out by Andy very publicly and I think indulgently. He's sitting on the sofa and knowingly, essentially, chopping them off at the knees. And I think this is part of the problem that the government, Prime Minister, will have.
And that's the beauty of Andy Burnham. He's placing people before the political party.
Yeah, but you can do that in private. You're a team. It's a team sport.
The team stuff isn't working. Andy Burnham is the de facto leader of the opposition, of His Majesty's opposition, and is coming from within, and we're thankful to him for it. One of the most unforgivable elements that happened after COVID, it was beautiful to see during COVID that we got homeless people off the streets en masse. There was nobody on the streets whatsoever. And that was an amazing thing to see.
And it shows it can be done.
It can be done. And that's the most unforgivable element of post-COVID life, that we just reverted to type. We wasted a whole shed load of money. We didn't actually learn from the actual systems and controls they put in place, the safety net we created for people. We just let homeless people leave.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying this morning.
Are you disturbed by that? Kwasi is very disturbed by it.
And Kwasi.
So whatever we did during COVID to get homeless people off the street, let's do it again. Let's get homeless people off the street. It's an abomination that in the era of the iPhone, we're thinking of people putting people on Mars or so, we've got people living in the streets. That it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Well, too wealthy a nation for this to happen.
And it seems to be more and more visible. I mean, it's literally on Westminster's doorstep, isn't it? If you go to Westminster Tube, you see people there, you see people in the underpass, and you just think, how can we be in 2025?
You're absolutely right. There's
it's more visible.
More visibly, Well,
look, we'll be talking, Kate and I will be talking at about 8:30 to the Homelessness Minister, so we'll put all these points to her.
Alison McGovern, that
Alison McGovern, I want to talk about this, though. This is interesting. Overnight, it's been revealed that Donald Trump wants to make any of us, any foreign tourists, but including those of us in the UK who say want to go to Disney World in Florida with our kids, if we want to get or go to the football, whatever, we have to produce our record of our 5-year social media history before we're allowed entry. So you've got to dig through all your Twitter stuff, all your Instagram stuff, Facebook, and present it to the American authorities to trawl through. And what Kate said this morning was, well, if that includes what people say about you online, well, then we're never going to...
I'm not going to Disney World, am I? No.
But it will be specific, I'm sure. It'll be specifically about what you have written.
Right.
And we used to do this.
And it's also emails, by the way, Kwasi. It's 10 years of emails.
Yeah, because, I mean, his argument will be people are coming in, we don't know who they are, and they're causing disruption. You've had people being killed, you've had people, terrorist incidents, and in order to be more safe, we've got to know who these people are. We've got to know what's going on in their minds. We've got to know what's going on in their minds.
It's slightly different. It's slightly different. So the person you speak of in that situation, there was an Afghan...
the
most recent one. So
the most recent one.
The overwhelming majority of Americans are killed by Americans.
Of course they are, but that doesn't mean you can't keep out dangerous foreigners.
No, of course, I completely agree. But in this situation, what they're looking at is actual people who are subject to the visa waiver program, the ESTA program, people who normally in the past don't have to go through visas. But even then, too, when you put the when you follow your ESTA thing, they do ask for your social media account previously. But now the fear is that what's being looked for is political opposition, legitimate political opposition to the administration.
So you've tweeted something about Trump?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or gone online on a group which doesn't like Trump.
But it's entirely legitimate. If someone has been, posting a sort of jihadist content, terrorist content, of course you wouldn't let them in.
But isn't that checked already,
That's already
Isn't that
covered,
checked already when you apply for your form?
So I don't think this is a kind of political screening thing in the way that Nels is implying.
Wake up!
I think it's. Am I being naive?
You are being very naive.
I don't think so.
Honestly, you asked the question. I think you might be.
Yeah,
I don't think that. I think it's entirely
Trump
legitimate.
is paranoid.
Yeah.
Whatever you may think about him, and you may argue his good and strong points, which I would, he's a paranoid individual. We know that with the way he behaves.
But look, the administrative system there is basically going to screen this stuff and say, these people are dangerous, these people are OK.
Well, you say this stuff is as well as social media information. I'm just reading from the statement. The new proposed document, or the document of the proposal, proposes the gathering of the applicants' telephone numbers, email addresses, as you've said, and emails used over the last 5 and even 10 years, and extra information about their family members. I mean, it's very dystopian.
Where your family members came from.
I've always been of the view.
Yeah.
I mean, with this libertarian debate, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. That's
where your family members came from shouldn't be something you have to hide.
That's generally my view. That's generally my view.
Did you read the national
and
security?
Given the terrorist threats, given the violence that we've seen from people coming from abroad, I think it's entirely legitimate for him to...
Well, one thing which you might have to be disclosed as part of this process is a criminal record that you might have picked up when you were a kid. And David Lammy made a statement last night. He is very keen that children who have perhaps been convicted of stealing a bicycle, riding on the pavement, spraying a bit of graffiti on a wall, and have a criminal record which can be disclosed to employers, for example, decades later. He wants that stopped. He wants kids' criminal records to be wiped clean so that it doesn't pursue them through their adult life.
Fantastic idea. We're perhaps one of David Lammy's best ideas since he's been in government. And I'm not somebody who often praises David Lammy, but I think this is really good and really sound and is compassionate too. There has to be controls around it too at the exact same time. By that I mean this is that what you don't want a situation is which exploitative gang leaders types or so start actually sending out young people to commit the crimes knowing that, OK...
It sounds great, but what's going to happen is that let's say that all these records are wiped clean, and then somebody, much later in life...
Commits a crime,
and their employer says, well, I didn't know anything about this. This is terrible.
Well, I think...
It feels the flip side of the Trump approach, doesn't it? On the one side here, our Justice Secretary is saying, we don't want these convictions to blight people's life, and you think, that sounds sensible.
But if you're an employer...
But then if you're arguing that we should be looking into people's social media because we do need to know what people are up to, then it's sort of...
But I'm not backing the Lammy thing. I'm saying it sounds good in theory, but if someone commits... quite a serious crime at 16 or 17.
He's not talking about that. He's talking about low-level juvenile crimes, just like riding on the pavement.
OK.
A bit of graffiti.
Are you sure that's what he's talking about?
Well, I'm not sure, because it's an overnight story. But that is what is being reported.
I think that employers, people who are dealing with people as adults...
I mean, you'd think
should know
it's
about their
It's an opportunity for a second chance for people. Have you ever met somebody or so who did something when they were young, and it's like a ball and chain around there, hold on to forever? It's almost. I met one guy once or so. He told me that he prays sometimes that the mistakes he made when he was young could just go away because how it would actually how it's held his life back. And I think to myself, those sorts of people, give them a second chance, give them a chance to wipe the slate clean. Because people do change. We have to believe that. We do have to believe in rehabilitation as a justice system.
You have been caught spitting out a leaf blowing into your mouth. In which case,
you're in a lot of trouble.
You deserve
you're talking to a woman that danced on speakers in the 80s when there were no mobile phones or records. So I'm all for second chances.
They've got form, yes.
All right, well, stay with us through the rest of the
Can I just say something really quickly? Rest in peace to Sophie Kinsella, an absolute British original, a brilliant lady who contributed so much to us as writers. So, rest in peace.
And her last book, where she tackled her brain cancer with such humour and grace, is extraordinary. Yeah, she will be so missed.
So young.
Crazy young. Yeah.